The atrocities perpetuated at Amritsar have proved that imperialism run mad is more dangerous, more vindictive, more inhuman than a frenzied, uncontrollable mob. Lala Lajpat Rai. I knew my grandmother lived close to the Bagh, but it is only recently that I realized what she must have been through in 1919. So I wanted to share some of that trauma and the pain with the world and decided to write this book. Welcome to Amritsar. This is the spiritual capital of the Sikhs, and lakhs of pilgrims come here every day. But even 100 years ago, it was extremely important and a very, very crucial city, because not only was it the spiritual capital even then of the Sikhs, but also because it was a very important trading hub. It lay on the routes between Kashmir and Afghanistan. It was a sister city to Lahore, where Punjab was ruled from. And it was also very important for the British. Punjab was very crucial because it was from here that they got the maximum number of soldiers to fight for them, especially during World War I. But things were to change very dramatically after the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. I'm standing right here in front of Hall Gate, where there was a terrible confrontation that took place just before the massacre on April 10, 1919. It was here that a large crowd had gathered in order to protest against the arrest of Mahatma Gandhi, which had happened on the 9th of April, and also to request for the release of two local leaders, much loved local leaders. One was Saifuddin Kichlu, the other one was Satyapal, who had been tricked into coming to visit the DC early morning on the 10th of April and then had been arrested. So the people gathered right here to take a faryad to the DC that please release our two local leaders. Instead of which, as they proceeded a little further, where there used to be a footbridge, they encountered British soldiers who refused to let them proceed further to meet the DC, and in the firing, around 20 to 30 Indians were shot dead. And in that terrible atmosphere where they were attacking British symbols of power, again, very, very unfortunately, 5 Europeans were killed and 2 women were assaulted rather brutally. And this made the British extremely angry. And they began to think that how could they teach the Indians a lesson and make them realize that what they had done was a huge mistake. The Jallianwala Bagh massacre was the attempt by the British to teach that terrible lesson to the Indians. So here we are at ground zero, where 100 years ago, thousands of people had gathered to protest against the Rowlatt Acts, which was under the umbrella of a satyagraha that had been organized by Mahatma Gandhi. However, there were also people here who had come quite innocently to celebrate Baisakhi, a Sikh festival. On that day, neither of these two groups was aware that General Dyer was going to enter and start firing upon them. General Dyer had arrived in the city on the 11th of April after the riots that had taken place on the 10th. The British were extremely angry at the thought that the Indians had dared to kill 5 Europeans on the 10th of April. They wanted revenge, and General Dyer had been sent in to punish what he called the naughty boys. So now he was here in the Bagh on the 13th of April. Let's just find out what exactly happened here. Just 600 meters away from the Golden Temple, the Jallianwala Bagh was a popular resting place for pilgrims and tourists alike. Now it houses a memorial of national importance, a poignant reminder of the atrocities of the British Empire. Thousands of people throng here every day to pay their respects to those who were martyred. Now I am joined by Amandeep Bal, who is a professor of history at Guru Nanak Dev University and an expert on the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. Can you tell me something about what was the scene, Amandeep, when General Dyer arrived in this Bagh?
When General Dyer arrived in this Bagh, there were thousands of people. It's believed there were around 15 to 20,000 people in this Bagh.
And it's a big Bagh, so
it's a very big
Bagh. 6.5 acres.
So it is believable, and that there were large number of people, and most of these people had no clue that what had happened on 10th of April.
And so immediately, what is the reaction of the crowd? They must have been bewildered because people start dying almost immediately. It's a very close range. I mean, he's standing almost 150 to just 200 feet away, and he's firing directly into the crowd, which is probably at a lower height from him.
They were just running to save their lives, and in the process, some of them fell into this well also. Lot of them, in fact, because we don't have the exact number, though it is written 120 on the well. But they
didn't jump in. They were just stumbled in because there was no rim around the well.
They were just running around to save their lives.
So there is so much to learn about what happened that day, 13th of April 1919 in this Bagh. Let's just go and take a look at some of the bullet marks now. Looking at the bullet marks, what would be your conclusions? What kind of bullets were used? What was the intention? And what do you think was the condition of the people who were facing these kind of bullets?
303 bullets were used, 1,650 rounds were fired, and he continued firing for 10 minutes. And the condition of the people you can understand when suddenly the firing starts. People who have no idea, because no warning was issued.
So Dyer never brought in any British soldiers at that point. He was not going to do that because otherwise the British would have taken the blame for having killed all these people. What do you think was the reason, and who did he bring in with him?
Most of those he brought were Balochis and the Gurkhas. He also did not bring inside the Bagh the other Punjabi soldiers. He must have thought that they might refuse to fire.
That again just points to the kind of careful planning that he had done before he came, and it sort of shows again that this was probably a trap that had very carefully been set up in order to get the people to collect and then to shoot large numbers of them. So this, when we look at these marks on the wall, I think they're a very grim reminder of what happened on 13th April, but they also are a very crucial reminder because, we should not ever forget. Records suggest that the bullets were fired for 10 minutes. People living in nearby areas could hear the shots and the screams. As news of the massacre spread, some relatives visited the victims, others were too scared to venture out. Since curfew was imposed after 8 p.m., Dyer said that the night was peaceful.
It's very difficult to come to the conclusion about the exact number of the deaths, because Seva Samiti because that's the body which helped bury or cremate these dead bodies. It said around 500. Later on, when the British government started counting after 4 months, After some consensus, they came to 379 because they have the names and the figures for those people.
And of course, we must remember that many people ran home, they were wounded, they hid at home, they did not want the British to know that they were in the Bagh, and so many just died at home. Indeed, not just weeks, months, but sometimes years later.
There was so much of fear because immediately after that, the martial law was imposed in Amritsar.
As we stand in front of the Amar Jyoti, Amandeep, do you think this was the flame that lit the freedom struggle?
Jallianwala Bagh massacre changed the course of Indian national movement. It brought people from diverse communities, religions together. Every Indian, Hindu or Muslim or Sikh, was affected by this massacre.
Because they completely lost faith in British justice and fairness. And I think more so when in British Parliament as well, they saw that there was no support for the Indian side, but much more support for Dyer and O'Dwyer.
Yes. Mm-hmm. In fact, O'Dwyer is the one who was the Lieutenant Governor of Punjab at that time. He gave full support to Dyer.
I do want to present you with this flower that we have made. It is for the martyrs of Jallianwala Bagh.
Okay.
So I feel very, grateful that I can give it to you in this space. This is a yellow color, which is for Baisakhi, and it has a Kesari center for sacrifice, and it is made in khadi in memory of Gandhi. The massacre did not end with the murderous assault on 13th of April. Dyer passed his most infamous edict in the wake of the massacre, the crawling order. Just after the massacre at Jallianwala Bagh, Amritsar became like a concentration camp. Not only were people refused medical help at the civil hospital, they were also called rabid dogs and told to get treatment from Gandhi, Kichlu and others. But there were some awful, really bizarre martial law orders that were also passed around that time, especially on this lane where we are standing. This lane became infamous because this was where the crawling order was passed, which meant that no resident of this lane could even reach his own home without crawling on his stomach. And this meant also that people in these homes became like prisoners. The women could not go out, the children did not get any food, there was garbage all over the streets because the sweepers refused to come in, and so many of the residents refused to even enter, which meant that families got separated for the period when this order was there. And of course, just crawling on this lane meant they had to go through all kinds of filth and dirt. Not only that, there were British soldiers who were posted on the street to ensure that the order was strictly obeyed. And that also meant that there was actually a whipping post which was put up here on this street so that anyone who disobeyed the orders would be whipped publicly. But that was not all. Why was this order imposed in the first place? It was because on the 10th of April, there was a missionary called Massacre Sherwood who was cycling down the street, and she was assaulted by some members of the crowd who were running away from what was happening in Hall Bazaar, and they were enraged when they saw a white woman on a bicycle. They attacked her. We must remember that Massacre, though she was very brutally beaten, was actually rescued by one of the people who lived in these very houses, and they took her in and rescued her. But Dyer, when he saw how brutally she had been attacked, decided that he needed to punish everyone who lived not only in the street, but everyone who in any case passed through it. So that is why the order was very strange. It did not make any distinction between those who were guilty, supposedly, and those who were innocent. What it also meant was that the soldiers here were able to frighten the residents who lived inside. They would even shoot the pigeons of this particular lane and barbecue them on the street, on the doorsteps, so that people inside would get really scared, because a lot of them used to, you know, these were pets, the pigeons were pets, and this was awful what was happening to them. The children also were very frightened, and there is one terrible story about a little girl who is so scared when she sees the soldiers shooting the pigeons that she tells her mother that they have killed the pigeons and now they have come to kill me. And she's only about 5 years old, and out of fear she dies. So there are very many unrecorded stories. This particular lane is all about how families were locked in and made to suffer by Dyer for things that they had not done. The suffering of the people in the street is difficult to describe. Apart from the humiliation of becoming prisoners in their own homes, there were also the British soldiers whom women accused of urinating in the wells on the street and spoiling the water. They also accused them of barging into their homes and actually misbehaving with them. The children starved, medicines were not available, and it was a street where everybody could not ever forget the tyranny of the Raj.
Standing here, it's hard not to get goosebumps. A century has passed, but scrape the surface and the wounds are still raw.
नमस्कार जी, नमस्कार। हाँ जी, हम आपकी गली में आए हैं कुछ सवाल पूछने के लिए। मेरा नाम किश्वर देसाई है, हम जी टीवी के लिए एक प्रोग्राम बना रहे हैं। आप और आपका नाम क्या है? पहला सवाल।
मेरा नाम सुमार चंद्र, 70 साल मेरी एज है जी। हम 100 साल से बाजार में रहे हैं। अच्छा, हमारे पूर्वज सारे रहते थे।
और आपका?
मेरा नाम सुषमा दुग्गल है।
हाँ जी।
और मैं 50 साल से इस बाजार में रह रही हूँ, जब से मेरी शादी हुई है
जी।
और हमारे दादाजी 100 साल से रह रहे थे
जी। तो उनका नाम क्या था?
उनका नाम था मानिक चंद जी दुग्गल।
अच्छा, तो वो भी घायल हुए थे जलियांवाला बाग में?
हाँ जी, हाँ।
क्या हुआ था उनके साथ?
वो बड़े फ्रीडम फाइटर थे
जी।
वो वहाँ लेक्चर सुनने गए हुए थे, और वहाँ जब जनरल डायर ने गोली चलाई तो लोगों में भगदड़ मच गई बहुत ज़्यादा, और उन्होंने इतने शेर वहाँ पे बोले, इतने लोगों को इनकरेज किया, इतना उन्होंने देश के बारे में बोला, लोग उनकी बातों में आके थोड़ा भागने दौड़ने से ना खड़े हो गए, रुक गए, और वो काफ़ी देर वहाँ करते रहे, और तब तक बहुत रात हो चुकी थी। फिर उनकी टांग में गोली लगी, खून से लथपथ वो रात को 10 बजे घर वापस आए।
As you can see, the stories from 1919 still echo in the streets of Amritsar. बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया, आपने बहुत सारी हमें कहानियाँ सुनाई। Thank you, thank you.
None of the survivors of the Jallianwala Bagh massacre are alive today, so we can't get any more eyewitness accounts. But the memories of that fateful day are alive in the hearts and minds of people who lost their family members. Mahesh Bahel has grown up hearing stories about his grandfather, Lala Hariram Bahel, who was killed during the massacre. The Bahels ensure that their grandchildren too know of the sacrifice made by their great-great-grandfather. He may be gone, but he is certainly not forgotten.
ये जलियांवाला बाग है, यहाँ चली थी गोलियाँ। ये मत पूछो किसने खेली, यहाँ खून की गोलियाँ। एक तरफ बंदूकें दन-दन, एक तरफ थी टोलियाँ। मरने वाले बोल रहे थे इनकलाब की बोलियाँ। यहाँ लगा दी बहनों ने भी बाजी अपनी जान की। इस धरती को तिलक करो, ये धरती है बलिदान की, ये धरती है बलिदान की। वंदे मातरम, वंदे मातरम।
This chapter of India's history should never be closed. The Partition Museum in Amritsar has been restoring and preserving various artifacts related to Jallianwala Bagh.
We decided to gather all this information and put it together in an exhibition about a year ago, because we realized that there is a lot of misunderstanding about what exactly happened in Amritsar and Punjab in 1919. And we wanted to clear up some of those myths and also present in front of the people the facts that there was a lot of trouble in Punjab before, and that trouble continued even after the massacre, because the British were very keen to teach the people of Punjab a lesson they would never forget.
many years, especially in British history, it was very much from the colonial point of view. I think it was very much from more of the top end of politics and historians, and I think having places like this, it brings it down to more the experiences of normal people and how it affected the actual lives of different groups of people. And I think that's, to me, what's really important, that we don't just get this history that is biased, and I think that's why, for me, it's important to come here, and I think everybody should come here just to learn, because it's British history too. It's a period that we're not proud of, I don't think, as British people. So it's important, yes, it's important to see, to not make those mistakes again.
It's important for India and for the British people to keep the memory alive, because whether it's a positive part of history or not, it's a part of the history, and it's important to recognize that, and so history doesn't repeat itself.
This is a replica of a flogging post which was used during the troubles of 1919 to repress the people. Often students were tied to this and they were whipped, and we have tragic stories that even when they fainted, they were revived with water and then whipped again. The officers at that time preferred flogging to putting them in jails, because they often said that this had a more salutary effect in reforming people than jails did. People liked, they said, being in jails because they got free food in there. And we have some of those jails here where many people were locked up, some of them extremely important and very well respected people of Amritsar. Here we have one jail, a real one. Here is another.
Citing inhuman cruelty of the British government to the people of Punjab, Tagore renounced his knighthood. It was a turning point in India's fight for freedom. Mahatma Gandhi had this to say.
He said in a letter to Viceroy Chelmsford, "The punitive measures taken by General Dyer were out of all proportion to the crime of the people and amounted to wanton cruelty and inhumanity, unparalleled in modern times. And your Excellency's light-hearted treatment of the official crime, your exoneration of Sir Michael O'Dwyer and Mr. Montague's dispatches, and above all, your shameful ignorance of the Punjab events and callous disregard of the feelings betrayed by the House of Lords, has filled me with the greatest misgivings regarding the future of the empire, have estranged me completely from the present government, and have disabled me from tendering, as I have hitherto tendered, my loyal cooperation." Gandhi said that he did not actually seek revenge, but he wanted to change the system that produced Dyer. And so he began working on the freedom struggle, and within 3 decades, India was to attain independence. That is why we should never forget the sacrifice of those who were massacred on April 13th, 1919, 100 years ago.